In the mountains of Romsdal in Norway, Tobias is taking his girl Nora to see the troll. The fantasy says 13 trolls once assembled here for a wedding, yet they become so drunk, he forgot about time and became mountains. Nora believes she's old for fantasies now, which harms Tobias to hear, and he reminds. After 20 years, on the Atlantic bank of northwestern Norway, Nora is an excavator on a digging campaign with her group. The majority of them are prepared to surrender since they don't track down anything in a half year and assets are running short, yet Nora is difficult and continues onward. Her diligence pays off and she winds up tracking down a dinosaur skull, for which the group tosses. In the meantime, in the Dovre mountains, a development bunch is dealing with building another railroad. This has stood out from activists that are against such obliteration of nature. At the point when the explosives are at last enacted to begin the passage, something somewhere inside the mountain snarls and causes a breakdown from which not all laborers can run quickly enough. This incident and the seismic action it caused are quickly recognized by the Norwegian. Sigrid is responsible for dealing with the cameras on those airplanes and rapidly assembles a progression of visuals to caution state leader Barrett. En route to the base, Barrett is educated regarding all the harm brought by obscure powers. Pictures they took, which Barrett's consultant Andreas thinks seem to be impressions. Barrett thinks that it is yet ridiculous and gives Andreas 2 errands: to keep the press away from this data and to discover a few logical specialists that could end up being useful to them with. Minutes after the fact, a helicopter is getting Nora in her festival, inquiring. Andreas invites Nora to the base and takes her to a mystery meeting where Barrett, the most significant military pioneers, couple of different researchers are examining conceivable. When Nora introduces herself as a scientist, she isn't treated extremely in a serious way since dinosaurs are wiped out, thusly they could never have been the reason for this. However, up to this point the reports appear to lean toward the hypothesis of the reason being land in nature. Pictures show up on the screen showing a hole and spaces on the scene, which prompts the researchers to toss hypotheses like sinkholes or underground pockets of gas. Again Nora intrudes on them to bring up those pits are obviously impressions. Any case, she isn't viewed in a serious way since impressions would mean beasts, which is a moronic thought. Also, has tracked down live film of the incident. The annihilation is very upsetting to watch, however before the others can return to their gas hypotheses, Nora makes Sigrid play the video once more leisurely this time. There's an obviously thundering sound behind the scenes, like a creature, and in the shadows among. In the meantime in Lesha, an old several considers what has happened to their dog. Won't stop barking. Out of nowhere, the whole house begins shaking, so several hurries to conceal in their storm cellar. When the shaking stops, several emerges to find their home totally obliterated. The dog basically is alright. Back in the base, the pioneers actually decline to accept the effects might have been had by a Goliath animal of some sort, and Nora brings up that anything that it is they need to take. Barrett is intrigued by her disposition and makes Nora the authority logical guide. Then she's approached to go with Andreas to Lesha to look at the most recent incident. On the helicopter, Andreas asks Nora how she turned into a scientist, so Nora tells him she's cherished nature since she was a kid, and her kiddie love for fantasies developed. Her mother passed on when she was 10, and her father was a teacher of beginning and legends. However, the more seasoned he turned into, the less he could recognize reality and fiction. To this end Nora hasn't seen Tobias in years. Andreas admits he needs to be an essayist and is amped up for the chance of this occurrence having powerful causes, yet Nora removes him when they show up at their objective. The military is now getting the region, and Nora is invited by Chief Christopher, who shows them the tracks that came from across the waterway and into the valley, then make it 2 miles south into the mountains before essentially halting. The soldiers did a full scope of the area, yet they tracked down no signs. Nora asks the old couple a few inquiries, yet they didn't get to see much grounds that a giant hey heard something, an uproarious wailing that seemed like an exceptionally miserable song. Time later, Nora investigates the harm and notification and exceptionally peculiar and solid. She likewise utilizes UV light to search for natural follows, however she sees as nothing other than Earth. Nora asks to be assumed to the position where the tracks unexpectedly stop, and the warm scanner. Since this giant is too big to even think about stowing away or vanish, Nora wonders it's able to do camouflage. Nora's beginning to think of certain hypotheses, yet she is as yet uncertain, so she takes Christopher. What's more, Andreas to see Tobias, who emerges with a gun when he sees outsiders on his property. After Nora causes him to understand this is the girl he hasn't found in years, Tobias acknowledges to. Tobias' home is loaded up with paper clips and examination that show his fixation on finding. Nora prevents him from discussing every one of his hypotheses about Troll being real and the observers. being hush and requests that he focus on the recording she continues to show him, making sense. Considered, no one understands these mountains better than him. Anyway, Tobias thinks this recording proves his troll hypothesis is real, and when Nora focuses out, researchers would have proactively tracked down troll DNA if they really existed, Tobias reminds. He was going to uncover everything. Tobias was shipped off the insane asylum. He thinks people in control have consistently known, and fantasies were composed to make troll look shrewd and idiotic when they're brilliant. Nora can't really accept that what she's hearing, yet Tobias is excessively for complaints and joins. When they show up at the region where the tracks stop, Tobia quickly sees that the geology he additionally brings up this resembles being on an experience together again with his little girl. Nora doesn't maintain that this should be a compromise of some sort. Unexpectedly, the smell of hypernature hits their noses and the sky obscures as the mountain behind them opens an eye. It turns out both dad and little girl had been right. The creature is for sure a troll, and its capacity to cover has permitted him to profess to be important for the mountain, making sense of why the geology was wrong. Troll stands up, showing its strong body and thundering at them. Consequently, the group runs back. They actually figure out how to get the troll on camera, and when the base gets the transmission, Christopher takes the gathering to his tactical camp to call the base to illuminate them. Nora keeps on use the words obscure creature not to look insane, but rather Tobias interferes with her to let everybody know that a troll got irritated by the development in the mountains. The pioneers believe him to be crazy and throw him out, yet when Nora requests additional time, they're stressed over the well-being of their nation, so they'll feel free to set up a. Thereafter, Nora is irate with her father for demolishing everything and needs to leave. However, Tobias alters her perspective when he makes sense of he realizes this isn't a fantasy, this isn't a troll. The troll has awakened alone and is frightened. In this way, weapons will make it much angrier, not to specify nature generally pushes back. Nora acknowledges he's right and stays. Presently, it's simply an issue of persuading Christopher of. He right away turns them down, yet after some asking from Nora, he acknowledges to stow away the night has fallen over Heidel when the entire military activity makes it there. While they trust that the troll will show up, Tobias and Nora recall the old fantasies they used to share during their undertakings, and both of them at last accommodate. The troll appears a second after the fact, yet when he draws near sufficient he quits moving, and Tobias is certain the creature knows they're there. The soldiers open fire on the troll, disregarding Tobias' alerts that it'll just make him furious. However, the shots and the blasts sit idle and just goal it to go after back. Everybody starts taking off as the troll obliterates everything in its way, including the group takes cover behind a tree with an injured trooper, and when they're going to move away, the troll arrives at down and gets the trooper to eat it. Tobias makes sense of the troll cully smelled the blood from the soldier's injuries. Nora, Andreas, and Christopher need to take off, yet Tobias chooses to move toward the troll. To everybody's shock, the troll really quits moving and answers Tobias' delicate words with serene moans, yet sadly not every one of the troopers got the update. A truck starts shooting at the troll once more, and when the creature pivots to counterattack, it coincidentally hits Tobias all the while. As the troll leaves, Nora hurries to her dad's side, and Tobias mutters the words castle, the ruler, home, requesting that his girl make sure to accept before he passes on. At the point when they return to the base, Nora keeps herself occupied with investigating Tobias' examination to neglect. When Andreas and Christopher come to mind her, they illuminate her. They've lost sight of the troll for the present. However, the military is preparing for an airstrike. Nora figures this assault will have similar outcome as the first, meaning they need. The fantasies say troll could do without daylight, yet they've seen this one turn out in sunshine. The other hint they have is Tobias' notice of how the troll were obliterated by the Christianization. They contact Barrett and the others to make sense of that. Accounts say troll used to toss stones at temples when they heard the chimes, and that implies ringers are what they need to utilize. The pioneers think this is absurd, so Christopher needs to slice in to remind them nothing has worked on the plan. The troll returns minutes after the fact, drawing nearer to the Hunderfossen family park and causing huge panic among the group as everybody starts taking off with the exception of a young lady that needs to watch the creature. Christopher and Nora appear in a helicopter, directing an entire drift that is conveying giant bells. Be correct, the sound hurt the troll ears. Anyway, the troll likewise goes ahead and to guard himself, stirring things up around town and making them crash. When one will fall on top of the young woman, the savage amazingly gets the helicopter to save her before it leaves. Since this occurred in such a public area, Presently the entire world is familiar with the troll. Also, the reality it's advancing toward the capital city. Broadcasts from each nation cover the episode and telephone recorded cuts become a web sensation. Whenever the group gets back to the base, an enraged Barrett overlooks Nora when she brings up the bells took care of business, so they ought to attempt once more from an alternate point, and removes her from the misstep, and he'll show up for Nora if she at any point needs anything. In the gathering room, the tactical pioneers educate Barrett regarding a risky rockets that haven't been officially approved yet. Barrett can't really accept that she had hardly any insight into this, and Andreas brings up such weapons. Seeing as he will not be viewed in a serious way, he chooses to stop and rejoin Nora on his standby out, telling her to prepare in light of the fact that they're clearing the city. Minutes after the fact, Barrett shows up on television formally declaring a highly sensitive situation and inquiring and help them evacuate without issues. Nora and Andreas are in a similar vehicle and stall out in rush hour gridlock. Keep looking at Tobias research. The pages continue referencing Sinding and something about a watchman, which prompts Andreas to remark it very well may be Rickard Sinding, the ruler chamberlain at the palace. Nora out of nowhere recalls Tobias referencing ruler, palace, home his passing, and arrives at the resolution they need to go to the palace. Andreas drives them there and they are come by the watchman at the entryway, yet Sinding right away comes to give them access since he expected Tobias or somebody connected with him to show up sooner. Sinding makes sense of he regarded Tobias, whether Tobias loathed him, and his obstinacy. A long time ago, it was viewed as amazing good fortune to fabricate a castle on top of another lord's home, and it turns out this specific castle has been fabricated where the savage lord used to. Nora and Andreas are taken to a tunnel loaded with troll bones as Sinding makes sense of that the Christianization of Norway killed all that conflicted with their confidence. They trapped there, they locked it inside a sinkhole and left it for dead. Quite a while back, Tobias looked into this and Sinding sent him to the insane asylum to guard the secret. He regrets that yet thinks of it as the proper thing to do, which makes Nora. This isn't the ideal opportunity for a contention, however. Nora acknowledges Tobias was correct. The troll lord is coming home to the castle and they need to stop it. While checking out the bones, Nora sees her UV light is harming them, and that implies they've seen the troll out during the day. However, they haven't seen under direct daylight due to the clouds and the mountains. Andreas brings up they have no control over the sun, yet Nora has an arrangement, and she calls Christopher to get his assistance. He will set up a unique snare while Nora and Andreas draw the troll. In the interim, the troll has shown up at the city, and by the tactical assaults sit idle. Sigrid sees the pioneers are preparing to send off those rockets and calls Andreas to caution him, and that implies they need to figure out how to delay. Andreas asks that Sigrid attempt to hack into the military's framework to stop the starting while Christopher is ringing the alarm framework all around the city. This brings all his soldier. Sinding helps too, requesting that the watchman put one of the troll skulls on the greatest truck they have, which Nora and Andreas will cruise all over the city to draw the troll away. It takes Sigrid a couple of attempts to get into the framework, yet when she's in, she right away stops the rockets, giving Nora and Andreas the time they need of the truck, which makes the troll roar out of frustration and pursue them as expected. Nora calls Christopher to let him know they're coming, provoking him to offer an inspirational discourse to his fighters to keep them daring when the monster at last shows up. After lots of insane passing through the roads of Oslo, Nora and Andreas arrive at the roadway UST to lose the skull in the process. Coincidentally, the troll quits racing to get it, letting out an excruciating lamenting moan for its kids before it notices its reflection on a building. When it attempts to contact the glass, it breaks and the breaking clamor surprises the troll, making it incidentally drop the skull. What breaks into a million pieces. Angry, the troll rode in torment, causing Nora to feel how miserable it is over being the remainder of. The creature comes after them for retribution and Nora returns to the first arrangement of. At the base, Sigrid's hacking is found and her PC is removed so they can restart the system. Seconds after the fact, Nora and Andreas come to the region with the snare, so they leap out of the truck to wrap up, tricking the troll right to the middle as it steps on the vehicle. The troll attempts to step on Nora next, yet at that point, the fighters initiate handfuls of UV lights that encompass the creature begin consuming it. The plane with the rockets is drawing nearer as well, yet the pilot wavers when he sees. An argument begins at the base to see if they should abort or not, inspiring Sigrid to punch the idiot that couldn't care less about his residence, and the activity is actually cut off. And Christopher's troopers are now praising the triumph. However, Nora can't stand hearing and seeing a life suffer like this and turns off the soldiers get ready to shoot, but Nora stops them too before approaching the troll, the same way her dad did, tenderly requesting that it return security of the mountains. The troll stares at her, considering her words, but before it can react, the sun begins to rise and it burns the troll until there's nothing left but rubble. As everybody relaxes in their triumph, Andreas jokes about what they ought to call this new. When Berit arrives a moment later, she thanks Nora for her work. Andreas reminds the state leader that he quit and declares he'll be an essayist. Then, when he walks away with Nora, he wonders if there may be more creatures hidden in Dovre. Meanwhile, deep in the mountains, something is starting to move under a pile of rocks.